consequences for beef Wellington. Shortly, we'll talk to an Australian criminal psychologist about the infamous mushroom murders. But first, a look back at the case. Erin Patterson, a 50-year-old Australian, world famous for her cooking, and now a convicted triple murderer, found guilty after a 9-week trial of murdering 3 relatives and attempting to murder another by serving up a lunch of beef Wellington laced with death cap mushrooms. Her friend leaving court surrounded by reporters.
How are you feeling?
I'm saddened, and it is what it is. Thank you.
Did you have a chance to talk to Erin, though?
No.
Did you think that Erin was capable of something like this? She's a triple murderer.
Were you expecting your friend to be found not guilty?
I didn't have any expectations. It's the justice system, and it has to be what it is.
The case attracted global attention, the world's media descending on Morwell in regional Victoria. The scene's a stark contrast to the rural setting where the crime took place in July 2023.
With some of the best people I've ever met, they never did anything wrong to me, and I'm so devastated about what's happened.
Death cap mushrooms killing Erin's lunch guests. Just released footage showing her leaving hospital against medical advice 2 days after serving up the deadly meal, and showing doctors examining the leftovers. Police pleading with people to remember the victims.
I think it's very important that we remember that we've had 3 people. 3 people have died, and we've had a person that nearly died and was seriously injured as a result, and that has led to these charges. I ask that we acknowledge those people and not forget them.
Australians not at all surprised by the guilty verdicts.
It wasn't shocking. We knew that it was going to happen. It was just a matter of time getting caught.
She was always guilty in my eyes, no matter what.
As the world waits for word from her legal team to see if there will be an appeal,
How's she feeling, Colin? Are you expecting to appeal, Mr. Mann? Will you be appealing this verdict?
Erin Patterson has spent her first night at a maximum security prison.
Yeah, that is a sad story, this story. And the story started in, I think it was July 2023, when she hosted a lunch with this family. And the people were there were the former mother-in-law, Gail Patterson, and the former father-in-law, Don Patterson. It was also Gail's sister, Heather Wilkinson, and Gail's husband, Ian Wilkinson. And Ian Wilkinson was also a pastor, local pastor in that church. So Gail, Don, and Heather unfortunately died after, a few days in hospital due to the suspected mushroom poison at a time that now we know they died of that death cap mushroom poisoning. Ian Wilkinson survived after spending weeks in hospital, including time on life support. So really what made it so suspicious, and as you've heard the story, many people thought she was lying because she did not fall ill despite allegedly eating the same meal. She said she had ate the same meal. At the time, we know she didn't eat it because there's no way you wouldn't fall ill with the death cap mushroom because they are the deadliest in the world. So if you find them, do not pick them. Do not pick any mushrooms in Australia. So in Australia, there's a lot of things that can kill you. That is the snake, the brown snake, the snake's deadliest venomous snake, and the mushroom. So do not attempt to pick up any mushrooms unless you are an expert. If you find them, bring your counsel. If you find them, see something similar, better story than, they're very, they're deadly, okay? And they can attach to your skin as well, all right? So Erin initially she said she brought these mushrooms from the Asian grocery store and used some dried ones too But that it was really later it was really odd that she didn't actually get ill herself. She later claimed she accidentally threw out a food dehydrator, which raised further suspicion. All right, because why would you do that? Because she was trying to hide the toxin that they may be found in that food dehydrator that she used to actually cook this meal. She is found guilty anyway of the death of the 3 counts of murder. Yes, this is after was 7 weeks of it was actually not 9 weeks of a trial, and in nearly a week of jury deliberations in Victoria Supreme Court. They unanimously convicted Patterson, age 50, of deliberately poisoning her former in-law. The former in-laws, Dawn and Gail Patterson, and Gail's sister. So Heather Wilkinson's husband, Ian Wilkinson, survived after extensive hospitalization, leading to the attempted murder charge. Yeah. So the key evidence here was the prosecution presented compelling evidence indicating that Patterson intentionally served a beef Wellington laced with deadly death cap mushrooms on the 29th of July 2023. It was noted that she consumed a different meal than her guest and later discarded a food dehydrator containing traces of the toxin mushrooms. Like I said, it's don't touch it if you see it. You do not touch any mushroom because it will stay in your skin. If you're not an expert, don't do it. So yeah, which was odd. Yeah, as soon as I heard that people ate that, she didn't eat it, and I thought, oh, yeah. But anyway, so additionally, she tried even her mobile phone. She was found to have been factory reset multiple times. She tried to reset her mobile phone multiple times, suggesting an attempt to conceal some incriminating evidence. Yes. So now Patterson claimed the poisoning were accidental, contributing them to a mix-up involving a store-bought and a foraged mushroom. So she's saying that she went to the store and bought mushrooms, and then it was a mix-up with a deadly cap mushroom. Why would you pick up a deadly cap mushroom? All right. However, the jury rejected this defense, especially in light of her inconsistent statements and action following the incident. Yes, concealing it following the incident. She didn't act like somebody who it was an accident. Because if that was the case, that she would have said it, that it's what she did straight away. That's how she did it. But the behavior suggested that that wasn't any accident at all. Okay? Even because she didn't even eat the meal. Yeah. So she will remain in custody. So she's going to have a pre-sentencing hearing that will be scheduled during which the court will now consider various factors before determining her final sentence. Yes, it actually been a captivating story around the world, around this chilling story, detailing around the events. So it's actually served as a very stark reminder of potential dangers of toxic mushrooms and the importance of food safety. I think last year I told you guys about the story of South African children that died, the Naledi children. in that case, because it's South Africa, we don't know who's the responsibility lies in the death of those kids, that they consumed allegedly a snacks that they brought in the illegal immigrants' spaza shop. The spaza shop is a convenience store in a semi-rural area in South Africa township, just about 30 minutes away from the city. They died within 30 minutes. 5 died within 30 minutes of consuming that snack that was contaminated with organophosphate. And today, we still don't know who was responsible, why it occurred, but we know that there's so many kids who have died in South Africa being poisoned by organophosphate under the same circumstances in the illegal immigrants' spaza shop in South Africa. We know that after the police commissioner, the last video, second video, a third video, not the last video before last, then I was talking about police commissioner in South Africa who alleged that police are involved with criminal syndicates. That suggested to me that this case, it could well be related with the police being involved with criminal syndicate, that this case is going to be squashed and not be made public, how these kids died, how many kids are dying due to organophosphate poisoning in the Black community in South Africa. So this is another case that involves a poisoning. This one is intentional poisoning. She's guilty of poisoning 4 people. And yes, she's going to be sentenced soon about the case. So you can see the difference here when you have a good functioning government, when you do not have a good functioning government, as in South Africa, about safety, community safety. That safety of those kids and their families, and even then, still, it's a sad story, but it's not going to be last. When I had the chilling story from Kwanazi about the police in South Africa, how South Africans are so unsafe. The death cap mushrooms are called Amanita phalloides. They contain a deadly natural toxin. In chemists, is called amatoxin. Amatoxins, primarily the α-Amanitin. The α-Amanitin, it is the most potent compound in Amanita phalloides, in the death cap mushroom. So it is the structure of it is a cyclic octapeptide. So when we say octa, is 8 amino acid in a ring. So the structure of it and the properties are very interesting. That's why I said when I heard the story, it was the Amanita phalloides that allegedly killed these people, and she wasn't ill. It was like, okay, she did it. So it's a highly stable molecules, very resistant to heat, stomach acid, and cooking. So resistance to heat, to the stomach acid, and cooking. No matter how much you cook it, the toxin will still be there. Even boiling or frying the mushroom won't destroy the toxin. So it can pass through the intestinal wall and reach the liver quickly. So how it actually leads to this disease and eventually death is that the α-Amanitin inhibits the RNA polymerase 2. This RNA polymerase 2 is an enzyme that is very important for transcribing DNA, your DNA into the messenger RNA. Without the messenger RNA, the body cannot produce proteins, because the proteins are essentially mostly critical in vulnerable organs that require require high metabolic activities. These organs are your livers and the kidneys. So the toxicity, the dose that is required to actually be deadly, it's measures in milligrams. So it's 0.1 milligram per kilogram dose of the body weight can be fatal for a person. The 0.1 milligram. So a single death cap mushroom can contain up to 15 milligram of α-Amanitin, enough to kill several adults. It's a very toxic, this compound. It does have a very lagging timeline after injection. So the latency period is about 6 to 12 hours with some people no symptoms. But after 12 to 24 hours, a person could have symptoms like severe vomiting, diarrhea, and dehydration because you're losing a lot of fluid either way. So, and again, after that 24 hours, the person might feel kind of like that they are recovering, but that is the false hope. 24 to 48 hours, a false hope. And that's why often when people have, when you go in one of these electrolytes, we've had a diarrhea, it's important the question to ask what you've eaten before, what you've consumed, and then actually make sure the person's hydrated, and how long they've had their diarrhea for. Because within that 24 to 48 hours, the person might feel slightly recovered, false hope. Then, within 3 to 5 days is when they start to actually to affect the critical organs like your liver and your kidney. And if the treatment is not received, the person will die. If they don't, maybe they're in the rural areas where there is far away from to get to the hospital. They've been at home self-treating themselves with electrolytes and other stuff they get over the counter. So it's really important to be able to tell the story what you did. And I hope that people would not go and pick up mushrooms that if they not expect. Okay, that's all I can say to that, so that we all remain safe. Yes, it's a really infamous because that's this α-Amanitin. It's really stable, it's heat resistant and deadly inhibitor of fundamental cellular process. And that cellular process is the transcription. So, when we talk about that, it's actually very important for transcription. And so transcription, it's essential. It's the first step in the gene expression. The process that happens in the gene expression is when your body reads your DNA, and your body it's a process by which your body reads the DNA and the DNA instructions, and it turns them into proteins, which these are the molecules that actually do the work in your cells. So essentially, when we say it's transcription is when the cell copies the DNA sequencing into the messenger RNA, the mRNA. That mRNA is then used as a template to build a protein during a process called translation. Now, why is transcription so important that when you eat this death cap mushroom, that the α-Amanitin actually, it's a toxin that binds and blocks the polymerase 2, which is responsible for this transcription. Because it's the transcription is important because it makes the protein possible. Because your DNA holds the genetic code, but the protein are the workers. So the structure carries signal and they fight infections, and also they break down the reaction, catalytic reactions. Now, when you do the transcription process, turns the genes into messenger RNA so that the ribosome can read the message and build the protein. The ribosome, if you've done biology, they build the proteins. So the transcription, we are turning the genes into messenger RNA. So the ribosomes, which can read, to be able to read it, the message, and then build those proteins. So it's also involved in this in the regulation of cell function. So, for example, the different cells transcribe different genes depending on their function. So, for example, the skin cells will make the keratin, the liver cells will make the enzyme to detox the liver. So when you don't have the transcription, which is what this toxin does, blocks the transcription, then there is no gene-specific proteins that are made, and the cell lose their identity and the function. So another thing with this process of the transcription, why it's so important, it's important for cell survival and repair. When the cells are damaged or infected, they transcribe stress response or repair genes. Transcription will enable the cell to adapt, heal, and also protect itself. So you also, the transcription, we need transcription for our growth and development. So the embryos, people were pregnant, the embryos, they develop into complex human beings or a complex organism through the precise gene transcription patterns. So with turning genes on and off at the right time is what makes a hand, not a foot. Right? So it's so important for also for cell division and how our immune system responds to infection. So our cells will replicate DNA and divide using proteins made after transcriptions. The immune system uses the transcriptions to make antibodies or signal molecules that would help to fight the infections. So very important transcription for that immune system's response. When the transcription stops because the person has eaten a death cap mushroom, α-Amanitin, the α-Amanitin will then block the RNA polymerase 2. When the α-Amanitin blocks the RNA polymerase 2, then there will be no messenger RNA is made. Therefore, if we don't have a messenger RNA is made, we wouldn't be able to produce any proteins. And so if we don't produce any proteins, that means the vital organs will fail, especially your liver and your kidney would then lead to a death if there's no transplant, and depending on what time a person got some assistance. So, in other words, you need to think about your DNA as a recipe book locked in a vault. Transcription, we're talking about copying the recipe into a notebook. That would be your MRA. So when you do transcription, we are copying that recipe that's locked in a vault with DNA. Think about it, DNA is the recipe. It's locked in a vault. When we say transcription, we're talking about the having to copy that recipe into a notebook, and who does that is the messenger RNA. And then that, once it's copied, that messenger RNA then will give that copy of that recipe to a ribosome, which would be your chef. Think about the ribosome as the chef. Then the chef, the ribosome, can cook the meal. So it can make the proteins. So if the transcription stops, so you won't have any meals, meaning you don't have proteins. No proteins are going to be made. And the restaurant, which is your body, will shut down. That's it, folks. Thank you guys for listening. See you.